Welcome to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. Our mission is to connect the past and the present NICU mom by bringing them out of isolation and into a sisterhood of women who can stand alongside each other as we heal and grow both in and out of the NICU.
Our hope is that through interviews with trauma-informed medical and maternal mental health experts and vulnerable stories from NICU mamas themselves, that you would feel connected to the Dear NICU Mama sisterhood around the world. So, whether your NICU journey was 50 years ago,
or whether you find yourself in the NICU today, we hope that this podcast reminds you that you are not alone.
This episode of the Dear NICU Mama podcast is sponsored in part by an educational grant from Prolacta Bioscience. By unlocking the biological power of human milk, Prolacta is changing the lives of critically ill infants around the world. To learn more, visit prolacta.com. Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. It's your hosts, Martha and
Ashley
Ham. I get to see you tomorrow.
I know. I can't wait.
It's so funny. We are always hustling and bustling, so I never really get to take in the fact that I get to hug you, see your face, see your glimmering blonde hair in person. It will be
glimmering blonde hair. I thank my purple shampoo for that. It's pretty brassy these days.
That's nice.
Thank you so much.
I also was using purple shampoo because it was leftover children's shampoo that was in my shower. So that's where I'm at. Okay. Well, now that we're done sharing hair tips, I guess. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Doing great. It's a rainy day today, so I sat at a coffee shop for a half an hour and my love tank was filled. So I feel good to do this. This is going to be fun.
That's amazing. You're so good at that. You're a very wise person.
How are you doing today?
I don't know. But I'm here. I know that I'm doing well right in this moment because I get to talk with you and our special guest. And that's really all that I could ask for today.
Amen.
So on the podcast, sometimes we have the opportunity to interview experts in the fields of neonatology or maternal mental health or obstetrics. And sometimes we get the opportunity to interview specific moms and families about their NICU journeys and their lives and experiences. And that's what we get to do today. Ash, do you want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing this season?
Yes. So season 6 has been heavily focused on growing our families after NICU and really too just this whole conversation of growing our families. I think having a NICU experience really reveals that motherhood is not always linear, that it doesn't always look simple. And so we've wanted to share as many diverse stories and NICU journeys as possible. And one of those perspectives and journeys we haven't had the chance to share yet is about foster NICU motherhood. And so we are really excited to have Mama, NICU Mama, and foster NICU Mama, Sarah Yates on today. So
Yay!
Sarah, hello and welcome.
Hey.
I received your information from a foster mama that I know, and when she told me a little bit about you and I started reading your Instagram, I was really, really excited to reach out. So thanks for being willing to be on here today.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem.
It's also thank you for enduring some technical challenges. There will be a day in our life where we're able to start recording the podcast within like 5 minutes of getting on the call, but we've not experienced that yet. So thank you for coming along this technological journey with us, Sarah.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not the first one.
No,
so.
Never.
It's always something different too. It's like, it's, I don't know, sun flares or satellite fell out of the sky or something. So.
Well, Sarah, can we hear a little bit about your NICU motherhood journey before we dive into the episode?
Yeah, so that starts back in like 2020. So I have been a NICU nurse for about 5 years, but back in 2020, I met this little girl who was 3 months old, and she had a bunch of complex medical needs. I had never seen a baby quite like her before, but by the end of my shift that day, I had just fallen like absolutely in love with her. And over the next few months, it became obvious that she was going to be coming into foster care. So talked my husband into it, and we decided we were going to foster her. She got placed with us. She had a trach and a G-tube, and this hospital required like round the clock home health nursing.
Mhm.
So we had to get all of that in place, which is a huge pain in the
Yeah.
butt. And
Mm-hmm.
so around her first birthday, we finally got to take her home.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
That is incredible.
And I suppose too, one question, it's not on here. We're already jumping, I guess. But how did you choose to become a NICU nurse? Like what led you down that path?
I think I had always been like a little bit interested in it because I'm the oldest of 7 kids. So we were
Oh my gosh.
at the hospital all the time for new baby siblings and stuff. And I had spent a couple weeks in the NICU when I was a baby. So even as a young kid, I would walk past it and I'd be like, oh, that's where I was like when I was little and stuff. And so went into nursing school. NICU was near the top of my list, but I was also interested in like ER and pediatrics and stuff. But by the end of nursing school, I had like landed on that NICU is definitely what I wanted
Mm.
to do.
Wow. And so are you still a NICU nurse today? Do you still go in for shifts?
Yes, I am just PRN right now though.
Okay.
Like I'm working 2 shifts this month and like 4 next month. Yeah.
Amazing. So going back to a little bit of what you shared of, becoming a foster parent, what was that process like for you? And prior to meeting your daughter, was that something that you always felt led to do?
Yeah, so I had been wanting to do foster care for a few years. Even before I got married, I was bringing it up to my future husband at the time and saying like, this is something I really want to do. I hadn't like majorly considered fostering kids with medical needs yet.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it was just, I think it was more like this vague idea until I actually met Zariah.
And I imagine too, then being a NICU nurse, obviously, then you started to become so much more aware of different medical complexities and disabilities that surround kiddos who are in the NICU. Like you alluded to, Zariah has the G tube. There's, kids who come home on oxygen. There's all different types of needs and different levels of care that kids require. So did that kind of help you prepare the way or make you more comfortable with the idea?
Oh, yeah, I felt very comfortable with the idea of taking
Yeah.
her home. It actually, me and my husband both said it went like way smoother than we actually thought it would. But yeah, I saw lots of NICU babies come into foster care. Most of them didn't have like super complex medical needs, but we would have one here or there that would. Luckily, one of them, yeah, ended up going with a grandparent and stuff, which was great. But yeah.
Being that you were already a NICU nurse, what was it like to then officially become a NICU mom? And when did you really feel like, okay, this is also a part of like who I am and my title?
It felt really weird at first.
Sure.
To go into my place of work and be like a parent and
Right.
not a staff member. And I think people like found out slowly over the course of like a week or two that like we were fostering her. Yeah. And so it was kind of weird just like walking into work in my normal clothes and just walking, yeah, back into one of the pods and sitting at her bedside and stuff. And all of her nurse always like knew. And then after a couple of weeks, everybody knew. But I felt kind of out of place. Like I would sit there and just be holding my sweet baby. And then all my coworkers are like running around and like with an admission and things are crazy and stuff. And I feel like I should help them, but I
Right.
can't because I'm not on the clock.
Right.
It's what I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
doing right now. I'm just supposed to be sitting here.
Yeah, for real.
And I think I felt weird calling myself like her mom for a while because I don't know. Everybody had known her for like maybe 2 or 3 months before like I actually became her mom. So I don't think I really like truly felt like her mom till we took her
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, for sure. And what was it like to, bring her home? I know you said that you guys were up for the challenge of some of like the medical complexities, but what was it like those first weeks together at home?
Well, we lost all of our home health nurses in the first two
Oh
and a
my
half weeks. So I was like,
gosh.
cool. We waited 5 months to get all of these nurses in place. Well, and yeah, most of them quit. And then one of them we had to fire because she was just like super neglectful. I probably won't get into
Yeah.
that, but yeah, it was bad.
No, I mean, I think, and what you're talking to and alluding to, you yourself work in as a medical provider, but unfortunately, home health care and home health nursing, there's like this huge shortage nationwide, and it's really hard to find specific people, and especially if you're a trait kiddo or you need round the clock supervision on things like that, it's so hard to fall. And then if you don't find those people, then it's you, right? You and your partner 24 hours a day, right? That's a lot of work for you two.
Yeah. So for like a week, it was just kind of me and her, but it was fine because I took my FMLA whenever she came home and stuff. And so we just kind of chilled
Yeah.
out for like a week or so. Yeah.
Yeah. When you kind of started to take on that mantle of being her mom and a NICU mom and a mom of a medically complex kiddo, did it change your perspective as a nurse as well?
I think it did a little bit. But I think being a nurse changed my perspective of being a
Mm.
medically complex mom more than like the other way around. Like if I hadn't been a
Sure.
NICU nurse and had a kid with like medical complexities, like I would have approached it very differently.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you alluded to that you shared a lot about Zariah's life and death. I think you've told us you've been featured on other podcasts and you shared her story. And I, as a I also lost an infant, and I know it's just it's an insurmountable pain that can never be filled, right? And we are just really moved and honored that you'd be willing to come on and share about her here too. I wonder if you'd be willing to share with those listening about her and the things that made her special, and about her life and death a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, she was a very special, unique little girl. One of the most medically complex kids we had in the NICU before, but she was, yeah, very alert, like very happy little one. She couldn't move a whole lot, but she was always like smiling and laughing and stuff. She recognized people and voices. Yeah, she couldn't move her little arms at all, but she could move her feet fairly well. And so we taught her how to play with like all these different toys with her feet and stuff. And they were working on like, they were going to start working on like communication boards with her that she was going to do with her feet and stuff. And we would play little games. I had taught her how to give me kisses on the cheek. I would say, Zariah, give me a kiss. And she would turn her cheek and then like lean her face into my cheek.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
very sweet. She was very attached to us. My grandma just has no experience with kids with medical needs and stuff like that. And so I told my grandma, I'm like, oh yeah, she knows who mommy is. She knows who daddy is. And my grandma wasn't really believing it and stuff. I think she was just also a little bit intimidated by all of this because I don't think she had seen a baby or a 1-year-old with a trach before. So then she asked her and she was like, Zariah, where's mommy? And she throws her head back and looks at me. And then they do that 2 more times in a row. And then by the end of that, my grandma was like convinced, like, oh yeah, she knows who mommy is.
That's so beautiful. And I think too, like how wonderful is that these kids, they get to they come into these spaces and how like quickly their just like joy takes over the room, like and the space. And even with limited communication verbally, there's these other ways that kids can engage, and that's so important to recognize.
Yeah, they had done some like neuropsych testing on her, and in all areas she was like significantly behind average, but her receptive language was like just barely below average. And so yeah, she understood a lot of different things, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So tragically, Zariah has passed away, and I wonder if you can share a little bit about how that happened and the effect that it had on you and your family.
Yeah, so we had just gotten back from vacation. Took everyone with us. We took Zariah like absolutely everywhere with us. So she came on vacation. We lugged all the stuff with us. We loaded everything into her medical stroller. She went all around the amusement park with us and everything. She got to ride the train, which she wasn't super thrilled about, but we made sure she was a part of everything. So yeah, we had just gotten back from vacation. It was my first day back at work. So she was being watched by one of her home health nurses who had been working with us about 7 to 8 months. My husband was working from home that day because Zariah had an appointment later in the day, and he had gone out to do like a Walmart grocery pickup. He had said goodbye to Zariah, and she was like smiling at him and stuff as he went out the door. And then yeah, I get a call while I'm at work, and it says that, and they say EMS says that Zariah is in cardiac arrest and that nothing they're doing is working. And I'm just in like complete shock. Like I almost didn't even take the phone call because I'm at work. I'm not really supposed to take a phone call, but I just felt like I needed to answer this phone call. And so I went into one of the empty patient rooms and I like walked back out, and I think I just had like this blank stare on my face, and I like barely was able to get the words out. And yeah, one of my supervisors was there and she was like, let me drive you, because they said, yeah, they're like, get home as quick as you can, we'll like keep doing CPR until you get here. I don't even think I was like, I don't know, you're just in shock, like you can't even like fully process like what's
Yeah.
even going on at this point. So hop in my supervisor's car, she's like, you're not driving right now, just leave my patients, which is technically like patient abandonment, but obviously I didn't really care at that point. But then as we're pulling out, I get a call from them back and says, okay, we got a heartbeat, we're bringing her to the hospital, like the hospital where I'm working at right now. So we turn back around, we had just barely left the parking lot, go over to the ER. My supervisor's waiting for me in the waiting room at the ER. And then, yeah, I see the ambulance coming, and there's literally like 6 police cars accompanying, with all of their lights on, accompanying the ambulance. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never even seen this many people accompany an ambulance to a hospital before.
Yeah.
My husband was in one of the cop cars following them. He had gotten home a couple minutes before EMS got there, and he was actually the one that started doing CPR on her and stuff. Yeah. As soon as I see him, I just start like crying hysterically, because I just haven't even been able to get tears out or anything at this point, because I've just been in like so much shock. Like it doesn't feel real at this point. We're not even really able to get to her because they're like working on her so much, and so they take us into the room that's like across from the one she's at, and the social worker comes in and talks to us and stuff. And I kind of get the story of what happened. My husband shared some of it. The EMS shared some of it. My husband's not thinking clearly either right now, so there are some things he left out. I kind of figure out that when my husband had gotten home, the home health nurse had already called 911 because she wasn't breathing, but she never checked to see if her trach was still in, and so her trach was actually out for probably at least like 10 minutes before my husband came home and put it back in. He noticed almost immediately was out and started CPR on her.
Yeah. Oh,
and
horrific.
Yeah, and over the next few days, yeah, we spent time in the PICU. They originally thought she was brain dead, found out she wasn't brain dead, but then on day 2 she had like a significant decline in brain activity, and so eventually we had to make the decision to remove life support, which is no decision any parent should ever have to make. I even almost wanted to change my mind about it on the last day, but I felt like it was kind of God's sign that it was her time to go, because the day before we were like, we're going to remove life support on Tuesday. And of course, the day before, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, am I making the right decision? How can I go through in this and stuff? And her body, which had been pretty stable, had started like shutting down at that point. And so I felt like that was a sign, like, okay, like this is the right decision. Like you're not killing your baby. She's already going. And we were hoping at that point to donate some of her organs, but she took like 15 minutes too long to pass, which was really hard for me to process too, because that was like the one thing that was giving me like a little bit of peace about the situation. Yeah, it was hardest thing I've ever gone through. Yeah, it was so hard. Yeah, sorry, I can't even really get the right words out right now.
No,
Yeah.
great. Well, first, I mean, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that, because it's a to hear the story of a life and death is it's an honor, and it's the way that we know about her, right? Like this is the way that we pass her on. So we feel very blessed and honored to hear you share. And also it's just so incredibly sorry for your loss, because there isn't a way to fill the void, that there's nothing anyone can do that makes it better, especially in this way too, that there's a lot of different complexities and overlapping things. There's the medical complexity, the questions of what could or could not have been prevented. Like the questioning of all those things makes it really hard, I imagine, to bear. And I really identify as well with we also had to take our son off life support, and it's something obviously like you never think about doing, but it's really challenging to know when is the right time. How long do you wait? Like you said, you kind of have to make this impossible decision and just have faith that it's the right one.
Yeah, and I think also with my medical experience, like in
Yeah.
my head, I knew it was the right decision because
Yeah, of
I have all
course.
this medical knowledge and stuff. And this is something most people don't think of, but I had even thought about like what I would do in situations like this. But then, of course, you're actually in
Sure.
the situation and you're like, I know I said this is what I was going to do, but it's so hard. And yeah, I think, my head knew that it was the right decision. But when you're just like holding your daughter in your arms, it's like, yeah, it's so hard.
It's just that huge cognitive dissonance of,
Yeah.
even though you know that it's the path forward, it doesn't feel right at all. Nothing about it feels right. I think it seems like you've done such a wonderful job of processing through that decision and honoring yourself and really being kind to yourself about really an impossible thing. And and honestly too, what a blessing that Zariah had, you both had each other, right? You two were uniquely suited for each other as mom and daughter. You know what I mean? You were kind of made for each other in that way. And there's so many other elements to it too, Sarah, that sound just like utterly traumatic, like the medical trauma of it all too, not being, even how you were describing the ambulances and the police cars. You are an experienced medical provider, but to have those see that, and also to see your partner go through it too, is really hard. How do you two move through your grief day by day? How has it changed over time?
Well, initially I was super numb. Like when we removed life support, like bawling hysterically and stuff. But whenever they took her out of the room, it was like all of my emotions just like shut off, and I like walked out of that hospital without her, and I like did not feel a thing.
Yeah.
Which this kind of lasted a few weeks, and I was feeling really guilty about it because I'm like, I should be like a hot mess right now, but I feel like nothing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't shed a single tear at her funeral. And my mom was talking with me and she was like, everyone grieves differently. She was like, you grieved for an entire week in the PICU. Like, yeah. And then I've like gone to therapists and stuff like that, and they made me feel better. And she was like, this is literally like your body trying to protect yourself because your body like literally could not handle this anymore. And so I felt a lot of guilt about like my lack of emotion those first few weeks afterwards. Yeah.
That seems, I would totally echo what wise people have said to you too. Like that numbness, like you're at the epicenter of it, right? There's only so much that one person can handle at one time.
Yeah, there were so many people crying at her funeral and stuff that my mom was like, everybody is saying goodbye to her right now. She's like, you already said your goodbye.
Yeah.
And so
that's a really powerful observation too. And even the fact that there's I think that, we don't talk about this, but with the death of young children as well, like you also have to carry the logistical responsibility of parenting them through a funeral. You know what I mean? And how horrible that weight is, right? And those decisions are. So there's a part of it, like you said, that's for a community of people who love her, but it's still, you kind of have to shore yourself up and protect yourself as you move through that as well.
Yeah, it definitely felt like the funeral wasn't for me. It felt like it was kind of for everybody else. Yeah.
How do you, today, how do you honor Zariah's memory? How do you talk about her and keep her spirit alive with you?
I think usually this is hard right now because we're talking about all the hard things that happened, but I feel like a lot of people try to avoid talking about her and stuff, but I don't shy away from it and stuff. And I think people are kind of surprised about that. Like I'll talk about, I don't know if it just fits in with the conversation, I'll bring her up and stuff like that. And sometimes people don't know what to say, but I'm like, I'm not going to just act like she didn't exist because it might
Right.
make people uncomfortable and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about her a lot around all of our kids. Our kids, even the ones that haven't met her, talk about her sometimes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll see a picture and they're like, oh yeah, and that's my sister Zariah right there and stuff. So and looking through old pictures and showing people.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. It makes, and I'm tearing up right now too, because I just think isn't it crazy that like our kids can intuit and like can build bond and have this kind of relationship with them even after they've passed, which is so cool, or an idea of who they were and how they fit into your family. That's so beautiful that you do that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about her life, Sarah. And I echo what Martha said of it's just an honor to know her through you.
Yeah.
I'd also love to know, how did she change your life? Like, how has she impacted the mother that you are today and the woman that you are today?
Yeah, I think I'd learned this some just from working in the NICU and like working with some of those like really high needs, like chronic kiddos and stuff, but just like how valuable like each and every one of these kids' lives are. Like, even though she had so many disabilities, like she was bringing like so much joy into the world. She was so happy. She made people smile all the time. Yeah. She knew who grandma was. She knew who all her aunts and uncles were and stuff. And it was, I don't know. She just loved playing and was just a joy to be around. And her smile just brought a smile to everybody else's face. And
As you talk about it, your face lights up like instantly. It's so beautiful. When you talk about her smile, your whole face lights up. It's beautiful, Sarah. And I wonder then, after she had passed, when did you and your husband even feel open to having the conversation of growing your family? When did you feel like you were even ready to have those beginning conversations?
Okay, so confession time. This was during the period I was completely numb, and I think I was just trying to fill this emptiness and stuff like this. And so it was about like 2 weeks after she had passed away, and we got a phone call about a 6-year-old girl who was supposed to go back to her mom in about 6 months. And so I was like, the only reason I even considered it. And so I was like, this is only going to be short term and stuff like this. And my husband really didn't want to tell me no at the time. And so we said yes about 2 weeks after Zariah passed. And again, this was during the period where I was like almost completely numb. And so I was able to function pretty normally when she first came in. And they always say, don't take in foster kids to like fill needs in your own life. And I will fully admit that in that situation that's kind of what we did. I mean, I was a hot mess, but we did it anyway. And we should be getting an adoption date for that girl on Friday. And so
oh my gosh,
how God works. And even though this was probably a really poor decision, that he's turned it into something beautiful, and she's amazing and is a perfect fit for our family. And so that was it was not a good decision, but it's worked out. It's in a really beautiful way. So
right. Oh wow.
To be super fair to you though, there is something to be said about you have incredible skills as a parent and as a a nurse and a caretaker and all these different things. So pouring yourself back into something like that is also good. It's good for you, but it's also good for the world too. That's my opinion anyway.
I think my kids were never lacking. Like, I always made mention my kids had all of the attention, everything they needed, even as I was like just in this very fresh like grief period. But I think what was lacking though is I wasn't giving myself the time and space that I needed to heal. And so I was like neglecting myself. My kids had everything in there that they needed, but I was neglecting myself some through that.
Yeah. So with that kind of, when maybe that like realization hit you, was there like a moment when you were like, okay, it's time to invest back into myself? And if so, like what did those first steps look like for you?
I honestly went through like kind of phases. I originally met with a therapist, did not go very well, did not bond with her. But also I think I just wasn't quite ready. Like,
Yeah, sure.
I think because I was still numb and stuff, so I could talk about everything that happened, and there would be like almost no emotional response from me.
Sure.
The first time after her death that I really had an emotional response was I went back to her gravesite about a month after, exactly a month after she had passed. And I just like lost it and was bawling and bawling. But then again, after I left there, I felt kind of numb again. And I think I would kind of have moments after that where I would get really emotional, but then I would go numb again. And this probably happened over the next 6 months. And I honestly, I'd heard from lots of people who had lost kids that year 2 is always the hardest because the reality of it sets in. And I feel like that's been true for me because I used to be able to tell almost anybody her story without getting emotional. And I don't know, like the last 6 to 9 months, yeah, I get emotional just looking at pictures of her that didn't happen in year 1. Yeah, I get emotional talking about it and all of this stuff. And so I wasn't sure how that would play out in my own life, but yeah, got back in to therapy this year, and I think I'm in a really much better spot to talk about and stuff, and bringing myself back to that place now that I'm at this point and just really processing like what I felt in that moment. And so I feel like I've even been doing a lot of healing like this year as well, because I just feel like I'm in a better place for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I too, I think it's so, even like the little things that you've shared about how you are feeling different things when looking at photographs or talking about it. Like those are, and sometimes I think for, you know, just for people who are listening, sometimes it feels like, I'm struggling again, but really it could be, it's a sign of like healing, right? It's this growth of being able to experience different emotions and sit with them. So, I mean, really huge kudos to you for doing all of that work while also being a full-time parent and working. And I know it's just quote unquote PRN, but still, that's still working. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. So 4 of the 6 kiddos in our house right now have medical needs. And so I am running around like crazy, taking people to.
Did you say 6 kids?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
okay.
incredible.
Can we talk about that? So can we talk a little bit about what your family building journey has looked like as parents?
Yeah. So when Zariah passed away, we had 2 other foster kids that were in our house. We had adopted Zariah 3 months before she passed away. And one of the kids had only been with us 3 weeks. And so and she was old enough to like know what was going on and stuff. And she did not have medical needs. So I didn't really know what to do. This is kind of backtracking, but yeah, I didn't know what to do with the kids whenever Zariah was in the hospital dying and stuff. And so they found emergency respite for them. They both went to the same place. I was hysterical. I was wondering if we should even bring back the 8-year-old. I'm like, she's only been with us 8 weeks. Would it be better if she just got moved again and like never knew that this happened? But yeah, her therapist and her caseworker thought if we could handle it, it would be best for her to stay with us. And so that's what we did with that. Yeah, so we had those 2, Xavier and Braylee, who got adopted last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we got our kiddo 2 weeks after she passed. We should be getting adoption date for on Friday. Can't share her name yet because she's not adopted yet. And then the following month, so this was almost 2 months after Zariah passed away, I get a call from Zariah's old caseworker. And yeah, she tells me that they have this kiddo that has medical needs. There are concerns with the previous foster parents and stuff, lying about some of his medical needs and what he is and isn't doing at home. The therapist had hotlined or reported it or something. And she said, I know you guys have a lot going on, but you guys were like the first people that came to my mind with this situation and stuff. And so we said yes again. It was kind of funny though, because Steve had made a comment. My husband Steve had made a comment. He was like, the only way you're taking any more kids is if they're like under 1, like are a boy, because he felt outnumbered at that point. And ideally if they have medical needs. And so it kind of like hit all of those boxes and stuff like that, because I think And he had a feeding tube and stuff at the time too. And I think he felt like, I don't know, he had learned all of these skills and stuff. And he felt like taking care of Zariah, like this is what we are called to do and stuff like that. And so, yeah, literally probably one of the only kids we probably would have said yes to at that time. So then we took in Kobe, who was adopted last Monday.
Wow.
Oh my
Last
gosh.
Monday?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, how exciting. Congratulations to all
That
of
And
you.
is
he's supposed to get his
amazing.
G-tube out May 4th, which we're really excited about.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a fun
2023 is a
year.
celebration. Holy cow.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And then, one of our other kiddos is a sibling to Xavier. So he had a baby brother that was born in November. So we took in his little brother. And then we recently got another placement who we had done respite for before. And when someone contacted us and said that she was needing a home, we already knew her and stuff. And we're like, we can't just let her go to random strangers. We're going to take her in. Yeah. So that's kind of how that all happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's obviously there's so many different elements to foster and adoption, because for the kiddos, it means, trauma and interruption to their nuclear family lives too. But also the unique type of bond that exists between really special foster parents like you and your husband, who can create safety for them where there is none, is really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even in safe situations, it sometimes takes a lot for those kids to actually still feel safe. One of my kids who's been here, I won't call them out, but one of my kids that's been here for a long time, even though she's been with us forever, and she still will have moments where she just feels really, really unsafe. It's just, especially when you have trauma, like at such a young age, it like forever changes the way the brain functions. And it's just so hard for these kids. I mean, you take in a 6-year-old that already has PTSD, and it's, it's really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I mean, also another great reason, again, another kudos to you for doing that healing for yourself, because you're modeling the type of resilient behavior that can model coping skills for them as they move through life, what that looks like.
All of my other kiddos are in counseling right now, and they were like confused about why I was going to counseling and stuff. And I talked to them, and they still didn't seem to quite get it and stuff. But
Yep.
Well, and maybe then that's a good kind of segue into one of our questions of just maybe some of the misconceptions that you wish people understood about foster families or fostering. What, as you've been doing this now, what is something that you wish people understood that maybe is misunderstood?
I wish people understood more, like just how freaking hard it is, because I feel like it's kind of, foster care and adoption is kind of like glorified in the media and stuff, and that's not the reality of it. People don't post videos of their kids having meltdowns and throwing things and saying, I hate you, and your 6-year-old is cursing like a sailor, like while they're like completely in fight or flight mode because they got triggered by something. And so I think I just wish people knew more about like the reality of it. It's not like all rainbows and butterflies. It's not this happy ending that's all like wrapped up in a bow, because you see movies and they struggle at first and everything, but by the end they're just one big happy family. And these kids are going to continually struggle, and a lot of times like all the way like through adulthood. Like these aren't things that they're just going to like grow out of and get over. Like these things have like permanently, like it's changed the wiring of their brain. They're going to be forever impacted by these things. Even if it happened when they were really young, the body remembers what happened to them.
And so it sounds like even, obviously providing people in your community then foster families with even more support is probably ideal, and there's a certain limitation to what can be done too, but like there's obviously policy advocacy that can be done and things like that. I'm for sure I would imagine people can look in their localities to see what support they can give too, right?
Yeah, I know people who are involved in policy and stuff like that. I'm a little bit too busy. Had
6 kids.
But there's a lot of really good work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, for sure. you bring up a really good point too. I mean, I think anybody who raises children knows that the behavioral, the social, emotional, behavioral aspect can sometimes be the hardest part. But that idea of too, when you're seeing children out and about, and you see them in schools and other environments too, this reminder that trauma presents itself really differently for kids like that too. And so you said like that idea of kind of emotional explosions or triggers, stuff like that, um, it's it's representative of them being stuck in fight or flight, not who they are, right? It's helpful to kind of have that lens on it too, so that we can support them better and understand them better too.
Yeah, and I think I was just had this random thought that popped in my head, but yeah, something that foster care I think opened my eyes to, and it was something that I don't think most NICU nurses like ever think of, is like medical trauma.
Yeah.
And that's something I never ever thought of until I started fostering. And like Zariah had really bad medical trauma, and like I think my other boys might have to like some degree and stuff, but just also like the impact of those early even months or days and everything, and just the research I've done on trauma, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how much trauma have these babies gone through from being in the NICU for 3 months, like from not getting held enough, from having these painful procedures done and everything. I'm like, this is probably like changing the wiring of like all of our NICU babies' brains too. And it was something I had like never even really thought of before.
Yeah. Just a reminder too, then, like that the loving touch, the loving intervention, the safety providing for them is even more important for providers and their parents too.
Yeah, and the brain is resilient. It can rewire itself. Like the brain can change. It can change the wiring of the brain, but the brain is resilient and it can rewire itself and form new pathways and everything. And so, yeah, just keep loving on your babies, and you will. Yeah, I've seen my son Xavier, he was extremely neglected. He was in the NICU for 5 weeks of birth, but he was extremely neglected after that point. And it, like, he literally, there were changes on his MRI from the extreme neglect, places of the brain that were underdeveloped. And they said like it's literally because he like never used these places of his brain. He just laid in bed all day. And I have just seen him come so far. He never smiled. He didn't want to be touched. He didn't want to be held. And now he's a happy little boy he just smiles all the time and laughs and giggles and stuff. And he has come such a long way. And he's still feeling a lot of the effects of that neglect, but he has come so far. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah. So, not to go back a little bit, but I would love to hear from you of ways that loved ones can support NICU mothers and families. What are some tangible ways that you have felt support that meant a lot to you guys? And if we know friends and family that are fostering, how can we support you?
So personally, I felt like I don't know, we just came from it from a unique experience. I wasn't freshly postpartum. Everybody else was in really stable areas. The NICU was right in our hometown. And so being a NICU parent for these foster kids wasn't stressful in that way that it probably is for other people. But from what I've seen from being a NICU nurse, I think one of the biggest things that I've seen parents struggle with is finding childcare for their other kids if they have it and stuff, especially with like all of these COVID policies and stuff. Like parents wouldn't be able to visit their babies for days because they couldn't find anybody else to watch their kids. And it's something like so little, like watching somebody's kid for an hour or two so that way they can go see their baby, but it makes such a huge impact and stuff. And people that lived a couple hours away and they're staying at the Ronald McDonald house and stuff while their kid is in the NICU. And then if like their neighbors and stuff help take care of their house while they were gone and like feed their dogs and stuff. And I've even heard of people like, they literally clean the inside of their house and stuff. And meals for after they get home. I feel like sometimes that can be skipped because they didn't just have a baby. They had their baby 2 months ago or whatever.
Yep. Good point.
But it's still a really big transition bringing a baby home. And they could have been living out of the Ronald McDonald house for like 2 months and they're completely unprepared at home and stuff. And they don't have things already or whatnot.
No, that's super helpful. The friend that I know, they made like an Amazon wish list, and it was just because were the same thing. They were like, we haven't had this age of kid, we need all of these things, or like, so people came in and donated and just like tried to support in that way. But I love that you just kind of bring it back to those practical things as if you were freshly postpartum, because you guys still deserve and need that attention and relief of not having to think about cooking and all of those things too. So I appreciate
Yeah, and a lot of these
saying
moms
those
have
things.
also like missed their baby shower and stuff too. Like,
Yes,
and
right,
so I've had moms come in, they're like, my baby shower is supposed to be tomorrow, and I'm like, oh gosh, like,
right.
or sometimes their baby was born so early they didn't even have a baby shower planned yet, and now they're an hour and a half from where they live, and they're not thinking about planning a baby shower yet, and they don't get all of the stuff that most first-time moms get because it was just like an oversight and all of the chaos of their baby being born early.
Right. So maybe if we have some listeners listening who, listening to your story, have maybe always had a heart for foster care or always thought that that may be something that they would want to do, what, encouragement would you offer to those that are maybe embarking on that first step of becoming foster parents?
It really, yeah. Medical foster care, I would recommend some different things. And if you were just doing typical foster care, regardless, one of you needs a job that is fairly flexible. But especially if you're fostering kids with medical needs, you're going to have unexpected admissions. You're going to have a bunch of appointments. You're going to have specialist appointments. And if you don't take this appointment right now, they're not going to be able to see you for another 6 months. So you better make this work.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I had to do. But we were in a financial situation where we were able to do that. I think it would be really hard to be a medical foster mom if I had a 9 to 5, if we both had 9 to 5 jobs and stuff like that. And so I think some of the logistical things sometimes get overlooked. I've seen that happen. I've seen people take placements and they're like, crap, what are we supposed to do with this baby now? Or no places in our area have childcare for kids under 2. There's like a 6-month waiting list everywhere. Right. And they're like, crap, we both work full time. And just make sure you have a good support system, because the average foster parent only lasts like a year, and then they usually quit because it's just so hard and it's so isolating. And a lot of times it's because of lack of support. And so I think not everyone has a good support system, and some people are those kind of people that can make it work without that. I am not one of those people. We have a ton of support and a ton of people helping us, and there's so many different aspects. I could go on and on.
Yeah, of course. That could be like its own podcast episode, right? Well, and maybe for those listening that are NICU foster moms, what words of hope and encouragement would you offer them?
Keep advocating for your kiddos. At first, you first meet your baby, the doctors honestly probably know the baby better than you are. So listen to the doctors and listen to the nurses. They know what they're talking about a lot of the time. But then eventually, after they come home from the NICU and stuff, you are going to become that child's biggest advocate. And don't be afraid to speak up and get that child the help they need and everything. So.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably about all of your kiddos. It's an honor to sit in this space with you and honor Zariah's life and just the remarkable mom that you are today. So thank you so much. And for honoring NICU foster mamas everywhere. We hope that any of the NICU foster moms listening today have felt heard and seen. And I heard you mention it a couple times throughout the episode of just the isolation of being a foster parent. And so if you are a foster NICU mom, we hope that you feel seen and heard, and just reminded that you are not alone, that you don't carry this weight alone and this grief alone, that we are with you. So thank you again, Sarah, for being here and for the advocacy and work that you do every single day. It was an honor to hear your heart and get to know you more. And to all of our mamas listening, we love you. We will be back next week. And thank you so much for being a part of this community. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Dear NICU Mama podcast.
If you loved this episode, we'd be so grateful for a review on any of the podcast platforms.
And we'd love to continue connecting with you via our social media pages or a private Facebook group. And ultimately, NICU Mama, welcome to the sisterhood.